Hi all, welcome to another podcast about the world of reliable development at Design and Test Lab. Today on the podcast we have Volodymyr Obrizan, the CEO of Design and Test Lab, and I am Victoria, I am HR manager and recruiter. Volodymyr, I have a questions today. I heard that you are moving servers from Amazon in the company projects. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so we decided to move some our servers from AWS, Amazon Web Services, to our servers, which we will manage ourselves. So it means that, for example, if we have some backend application which we hosted with Elastic Container Service, and if we have some databases which we hosted with relational database servers, and if we use some other resources, so we decided to move it from AWS to our server, which we manage. And we choose Hetzner, so we rented bare metal server, like they tell it, and it's pretty powerful server because it has 16 threads, yes, 8 cores of Intel processor, and it has 64 gigabytes of memory and 512 megabytes of disk storage. And we're basically moving some our applications from AWS to our own server.
It's interesting information and news. Please explain the motivation behind this decision. Why did you decide to move?
Okay, so if you follow like some threads on internet, like in Twitter or in social media, I'm following it, and I heard about several stories that all these cloud providers or serverless providers, they charge very big bill for their services. So usually they provide their services like with some free tier that, for example, if you consume only like small portion of computing power or you have only few megabytes of files, they say that it is free for you. Yeah, but when you start consume more and more, yes, so the bill is growing higher, and that was the one reason that we just sat with a calculator and we see that if we consume the same power, if we buy some standalone server and we'll manage it ourselves, we'll pay like 10x or 20x cheaper than if we buy the same server from Amazon. So the cost, it was the very first point which we considered. So for example, that 1 hour development environment for 1 hour project so costs us like roughly $100 per month. Yes, and that's like only development environment, and it's used only by a few people. That's like couple of developers and a couple of test engineers. Yes, and we already pay for that $100. Yeah, so AWS, they provide these resources like cheap. Yeah, so we don't rent some powerful servers there. We rent the very low-end configuration of servers. But if we gather like all these dollars from each service, so for example, $15 from computing, $15 from Elastic Load Balancer, $15 from relational database servers, several dollars from IP allocation with AWS. And if you like sum all these low-end resources, so it sum up to $100. And at the same time, I can go and buy rent per month my own server, for example, from Hetzner. That's our choice, and they provide a complete server only for $40 per month. Yes, so as you can see that already we see that it almost 2x saving if we will go and manage our own server. But what we got from Amazon, for example, for computing for $15. So we will got some computer with 1 CPU, 2 or 4 gigabytes RAM of memory, and with 20 gigabytes of disk drive storage. And what we got for $40 from Hetzner, we got 16 threads, 8 core Intel processor, we got 64 gigabytes of RAM memory, and we got half a terabyte of disk drive storage. So we not only save 2.5x on bills, we gain like 10x or 20x on computing power, and that's incredible that when we tested our different workloads on low-end Amazon computers and on this the cheapest server from Hetzner, we see that our applications, they started running 2x faster than we use the same with Amazon. And that's like the second point that we can get. The first point was like just save on bills, that we can put 5 or 10 development environments on a single computer, so we don't need to pay like several times for different development environments, because we like develop 4 projects in parallel, and it means that we need 4x 100. So it gives us like roughly $400-500 per month across all development environments. And for this single server from Hetzner, we can put 10 development environments, and it still will cost us like $40 per month. So that's like the first point, that we will save on bills, like 10x saving. And second point, that we just got better performance in terms of CPU, random access memory, and hard drive.
Okay, next my questions. It's positive points, yes. Tell us about the reliability, security, administration, and any myths and realities about servers in general.
Yeah, so when I discussed this exit from a cloud, moving from a cloud, so lots of people told me, okay, you will have some problems with administration, you will have some problems with security, you will have some problems with scalability, etc. Because we just have lots of marketing information from all these cloud providers like Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, etc. that that the cloud is more secure, it's more reliable, it's more convenient, etc., etc. It's scalable, and so on. And I've just sit and did some thought experiment. Okay, first of all, that there is some problems with administration. Which problem? So that's we run typical Ubuntu server there. It's typical Linux. You can find lots of information about Linux on internet, because this mature operation system, it seems to me 95% of all web services on the internet is powered by Linux, and you can find tutorials and information about every topic you want. So because Linux is adopted for almost 30 years now, and so the first question is that you need to administer it. So I need to sign in to Linux. I need to put some command there, and for example, if we talk about AWS, I need to sign into some dashboard and push some button there. So for me, it means that I need to administer my AWS resources. On the same, I need to administer this Linux server. So this question, it's almost the same. And comparing amount of information available for Linux, it's much more more information and better information that we got about AWS. So that's question about administration. Another important questions which should be considered, that people told me, oh, you will spend 10x time on administration. Because and in AWS you can set up everything, and it will be running all the time. You don't need to spend too much time. But again, we already moved couple of environments, and what we see from our past experience from last month, that I spent the very same time launching servers and setting network configurations, which I did for AWS. I did the same for Linux in the same time, and it doesn't require my attention anymore. Because I set up it once and it runs all the time. So we checked it on practice. That's not true, that Linux computer will require more administration than AWS infrastructure. Another question about security, yes, so but again that AWS is advertised like it's more secure than Hetzner or some your own server, but that's simply not true, yeah, because like the data centers in Hetzner, they provide the same level of security as AWS, and we implemented the same measures which we implement on AWS. Yes, we go and do our like maintenance of security patches for Linux. Yes, so I've subscribed to all these news channels where this security issues reported, and there is only like two command line commands just to go and upgrade your Linux. In that case, that some security flaw is found for my version of Linux, I type two commands, and in a couple of seconds all these security breaches are closed. And you know what, that AWS, they use the very same Linux, yeah, so they fork, they have some AWS Linux, but in general they have the very same operation system. So we cannot tell that AWS uses some more 10x more secure Linux, which I use, yes, because it's open source operation system, so anyone can go and take it. So in these terms, that it seems to me it's not valid point that my own server is not such secured as server on the AWS. If we're talking about some application level security, so we use the same methods which we use for AWS. So we have like port filtering. So if we need to hide something from the outside networks, we just go and deny access through some ports. If we need to launch some resources not on public networks but on private networks, we do the same. So we set up private networks with Docker and launch those resources inside the private network. So it means that my applications from inside my computer, they can access that server, but you from outside network, you cannot access this. Yeah, and the rest measures, like we use SSL for encrypting traffic, so no one like the man in the middle, so they cannot dump our network traffic and see that. So for example, for our server we use Let's Encrypt service. It provides free SSL certificates to sign our HTTP traffic, and and the rest with like encrypted SSH connection to our server, yeah, that no one can just sign into my server not having my private key. Yeah, if we talk about what's next, about scalability, yeah. Yeah, scalability is a valid point, yes, and usually those people who propagate like cloud computing, that in cloud you can go and receive this computing power on demand. Yeah, so I can issue a command to the cloud and say, hey, I need one more computer, yes, provisioned and running. And they say that you can do that in several minutes or even seconds. Yeah, that's true, but it differs for different kind of server types on Amazon. And for example, from my experience, I know, so when I run my CloudFormation specifications, I see that, for example, relational database services with Postgres, they provision sometimes in like 15 or 20 minutes. Yes, so I cannot tell that I require a new server from AWS and they provide me it instantly, like in few seconds. No, so provisioning of new relational database server from RDS, it takes sometimes 15 or 20 minutes. And if we go and check how quickly can Hetzner provide you with some hardware, that some servers they can set up in a couple of minutes too. So it means that if I take that 15 or 20 minutes from AWS, I can go to Hetzner and require additional computer, real physical computer required from them, and it will be provisioned in a couple of minutes for me. So I tried to do this with myself. Yeah, so they have different server types, and they indicate that for some server types you need to wait for a couple of days, and for some server types you can get this instantly, so in a couple of minutes. And you know that installation of database server via, for example, Docker, it will take a couple of minutes. So that sometimes this argument that AWS is like more scalable, so you can achieve these resources faster. That's simply not true. Yeah, and there are some cases where your own server or a great data center like Hetzner can provide you with resources too. Another point that, so I cannot, for example, go and require 10 more servers at the same time, so maybe Hetzner will fail. But again, if we go to the very first point, which I told that why we did move our development environments from AWS to Hetzner, because of price and because of performance. And it is easier and cheaper for me provision additional server and not use it, so it just stays like and hot and it's ready to serve my tasks instantly, then to request it from AWS. Yeah, because on AWS I pay 10x for like new consumed resources, but I just can provision cheap server from Hetzner and okay, it will be the same spending and maybe even cheaper. So that's, in terms of availability of programmability, yes, that I can do this, request a new server from command line or with API call or with some kind of auto-scaling algorithm. Yes, that's true. So in this term, AWS is convenient. But again, so it comes with like 10x or 20x price coming from AWS. So I can just over provision my real physical servers and set up it when needed, then just go and overpay it to AWS. So maybe I answered this most typical concerns regarding administration, regarding scalability, regarding security. Yeah. One more note that I can add, that lots of applications, they served using Docker, and Docker excellently works on Amazon. It works the same on Hetzner like computer, yeah, because Docker is open source technology and it works very well everywhere. So on my local computer, on Hetzner server, on AWS, and it takes us maybe less than 1 day just to move out our development environment. So, and I cannot tell that managing it or administration cost is become like 2x higher than doing the same on Amazon. Maybe these people, they don't understand that anyway, it doesn't matter where do you host your applications, it's on Amazon or on your own physical computer, that you still need to administer it. It's just a question of your skills. Yeah, that for example for AWS you need to know all these services, all these configurations, all these parameters, etc. And people know that this documentation for AWS it's very big. Yes, it's like million of pages of per each services. And the same, you need to know something about like command line, Linux, network configurations, Docker, etc. to manage it yourself. Yes, but again, that's just a skill issue. So, and I cannot tell that. It seems to me that, like from my experience with Amazon and from my experience from administering own servers, it's easier to go and learn like 10 Linux commands than to go and learn hundreds of pages of configurations for EC2 instances or Elastic Container Services, clusters, etc. And just it is easier to find engineer who knows Linux than to find a very good DevOps engineer for AWS. So that's maybe one more point about needed skills.
Okay, lastly, maybe what conclusion can you draw about today's topic?
The very last conclusion, maybe for me, yes, I will be telling about me, that I feel that maybe I ended my 10-year cycle in terms of understanding of technology. Because the very first time when I started using clouds, AWS, it was like 2014, so it like 10 years passed, and we started with hosting some servers under my working desk in Kharkiv, 10 years ago. And yes, at that time it was a nightmare, yeah, because we need to provide some interruptible power to that computer to manage all these hardware faults, issues, etc. And we decided, okay, so we will never host applications ourselves. We will go and use AWS. And since then, like, it was like a question which who never asked, okay, what's going on with like self-host, and what's the pricing? Yes, and it was a surprise for me, because maybe it was on my mind for past year or two that, okay, what if we'll go and rent our own server? And I did it, yes. So we moved like a couple of development environments from AWS to Hetzner, and I proved it for myself that it is easier for some level of applications. It is easier to host it ourselves. The first of all, that's easier for me. The second, that it will be 10x cheaper than host on AWS. That you got like 2x, 5x in terms of performance. Yes, and conclusion for me that maybe that's my 10-year cycle of, this pendulum is when you go from one point of view to another point of view. So maybe I completed the cycle. So currently myself, I went back to idea that, okay, I need to host it myself. Yes, so if I don't see some very big reason to go with AWS, I will not do that. Yeah, so we have such reasons. So for example, if we'll develop some application related to health, we need to go into host on AWS. Why? Because they have tens of certifications. Yes, they have tens of security certifications. They have like HIPAA certification, etc. And in some cases, it is easier to pay AWS because they already have all these certifications than to go and pass and to achieve all the 10 certifications myself. Yeah, so that's a valid case that I need to go and use AWS. But other cases, if we talk about some development environment, staging environment, some experiments, some applications which do not require all these tens of certifications, so my default choice is to go and rent my own server. That's it.
Thanks, Volodymyr. It was a very interesting and useful talk. Thank you for sharing, and see you next time. Yes?
Yes, see, if you have some questions, so you can like do some direct messaging with me, or put this question in comments, and like from day to day we go and check for comments and we'll answer you, or we will answer this like on some next podcast.
Yes, have a good day.
Have a good day. Bye.